Hi everybody, drawninjakc here, and today we're going to go over my secret techniques to achieving realism. Now, I have different ways of approaching realism. When it comes to portraits, I do one technique, and when it comes to like drawing like full-bodied figures like superheroes and things like that, I use another technique. And I can interchange techniques basically, but on this particular video, I'm going to show you what I use when I'm doing full body like superheroes and things like that. So hopefully you can latch on to some of these ideas and some of these concepts. If you've ever been wondering about how I do it and the video is too fast for you, then I'm going to kind of break it down while drawing Deadpool, which I know is a fan favorite. And shout out to Kevin Martinez for recommending Deadpool. Kevin, appreciate the recommendation. Well, I'm very excited about showing you guys how this works. So without further ado, let's get to it. I have no idea why I did that. Okay, so there are four basic concepts that I use to achieve realism. One being base tones, 2 shadows, 3 highlights, and 4 blending. Now, an understanding of these four basic concepts is what you'll need in order to make your drawings look 3D or realistic. As you can see here, my approach is always to start with the base color first. That's just the flat color of the area that you'll be working on. I like to approach coloring in sections, so each section will be given its own attention, one part at a time. Now that we've got the base tones down, I like to go in with the shadows. Now with the shadows, I don't really start with the darkest shadow color. I usually start with like the next level up from the base tone. Because usually the next level after that is the darkest shadow color or just black. And then I put in the highlights, which basically pulls everything together. So we have base tones, shadows, highlights, and after all that's done, we work towards doing the blending. And the blending involves either doing it with a colorless blender, or you can just use different tones of the colors that you've already used to blend them into each other. A great way to practice blending is to take a color pencil or just a regular pencil and try to just shade from the darkest color of the color pencil, from the darkest pigment of the color pencil to the lightest pigment of the color pencil. So slowly start with I guess being a little heavy-handed, and then as you go down, kind of slowly raise the pencil until it seems like you're able to blend seamlessly. So if you can practice that every day, then your blending skills would improve quite a bit, and it would make doing realism much more effective and much easier. I think it's also important to point out that it's better to do realism in sections. This way you can, as you can see here, I'm doing his body, his arms, and all the areas that are red in sections. This way you can give the area kind of like a full finished look. And it does help. It does make a difference when you concentrate on one area at a time, because it does inspire you to make the other areas look as good. It gives you something to kind of work off of, because now you see that you did one area that's really nice, it's really cool, it's got all the lighting effects, it's got all the shadows, and so now you have to match the other areas to that. So that's always very helpful. And it's nice to see the masterpiece kind of like come together piece by piece, and this way you know that whatever it is that you're doing is effective, and it does give you the motivation to go to go forward with the drawing, because sometimes you never know how a drawing is going to come out until the very end. So if you do attack it in sections, you can basically get an idea of how the drawing is going to look from the beginning based on the work you did on the section that you first finished. Like I finished his head first, as you guys noticed. So once I finished his head, I was very pleased with how it looked, and I figured then the rest of the drawing is going to look the same way, have the same realistic look if I use the same technique. So for you guys out there that are trying to achieve realism, it's great for you to attack it in sections, or attack the drawing in sections. This way you can better gauge how the drawing is going to look in the end. As you can see, working with the 4 basic concepts that I pointed out in the beginning is allowing this drawing to become, I mean, you can even see even before it's finished that it's looking very realistic. And I'm not even finished with it yet. So the base tones, you saw that I put that down, and you saw that I went in with the shadows and then the highlights. And every time I put in the highlights, it just kind of just embellished the shadows even more, and that's where the realism went in. And now after you've done all of this and you've done the shading, it's okay to go back in certain areas and just kind of like, you know, touch it up and embellish it some more, maybe do some more shading, maybe put in some brighter highlights or some darker shadows. That's all part of the whole realism concept, is that after you've done the work, after you've done everything that you think you've done, and then you kind of just step back and take a look at it as things come together, you might realize that, okay, well, I can put a little bit more shadow here, I can put a little bit more highlights here, to make it look better, to make it look more realistic, to give it a more deeper feel of reality, of realism. And it's okay, totally okay to do that, because the drawing is never really done until you feel that you've done everything to make it look realistic. And if you don't feel that you've done everything to make the drawing look realistic, if you feel that there's something else you can do, something else that's missing, something that looks a little uneven, then you're probably right. So it's okay to just go in and say, okay, let me touch this up with a little bit more highlights. Maybe instead of a color pencil, I need it to be a brighter highlight, so I'll use a gel pen. Or instead of a darker red, I could just use black in this area. You know, it's okay to just kind of go over each section that you did visually and see if there's any way to improve the drawing or to make it look more realistic. Here's another secret to realism, or at least to my realism. Nothing is trivial. Nothing is unimportant. Every little piece of the drawing has to be given the same amount of attention, the same amount of detail, the same amount of care and notice that every other piece of the drawing is given to. So even the littlest part of Deadpool's costume, from the large area that's on his leg there to the little belt buckles and the little buttons that is on his belt and his little gun holster there, everything has to have the same amount of detail and attention paid to it. That's the secret of realism. That's the way you get things to look realistic, because in real life, everything does have detail. Everything is, you know, great in its own regard. So you have to give everything that's on the specific drawing the full attention it deserves. Another great example of what I meant about always giving everything detail. I know sometimes after we finish the main focus of the drawing, we tend to get lazy with the backgrounds or the surrounding supporting artwork. But it's very important, like on these rocks here, to actually take the time to do them, to make them look detailed, because they really do help the main focus of the drawing stand out. So nothing should be taken lightly. Nothing should be done halfway or with half attention. Even the rocks that, especially the rocks that the character is standing on, are his surrounding area, because they support the character, they support the drawing itself. So if the character looks good and then everything else looks like, you know, you rushed it, then the drawing itself is not going to look realistic. But hopefully you guys learned a lot from watching this video. I had a lot of fun doing it. And if you are new to this channel, if you've never been here before, please like and subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to ring the notification bell so that you know when I upload these really cool videos. It has been fun as always, and as usual, I'll see you next time. Wow!